A respected CEO by day, Malcolm Green traveled without fanfare or announcement. Just another black man in modest attire boarding a commercial flight to Atlanta. His mission: investigate troubling reports from a regional office where discrimination lurked beneath impressive metrics. 25 years after being homeless despite his engineering degree, Malcolm now owned Meridian Enterprises, the very corporation that once turned him away. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him as he approached the airport's VIP lounge, membership, card in hand, only to be stopped cold by Victoria's imperious voice. "Wait outside." Her dismissal carried volumes, assumptions made at a glance, judgment passed without evidence. Malcolm quietly complied, storing away this moment as the first piece of evidence. What Victoria couldn't know was that her casual cruelty had just set in motion a corporate earthquake. The man she'd deemed unworthy wasn't just any passenger. He was her fiancé Philip's boss, the owner of their entire world, and he'd just witnessed firsthand exactly what he'd come to find. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. Malcolm Green gazed out the airplane window as the clouds parted to reveal the sprawling city below. At 52, he carried himself with quiet dignity, his salt and pepper beard neatly trimmed, eyes that had seen both hardship and triumph. As CEO of Meridian Enterprises, one of America's most respected Fortune 500 companies, he could have easily chartered a private jet. Instead, he chose a commercial flight, first class, but deliberately modest. "Sir, we'll be landing in about 20 minutes, the flight attendant said with a practiced smile. Malcolm nodded politely. "Thank you." He returned to reviewing the troubling reports from the Atlanta regional office. Employee complaints had doubled in the past 6 months. Customer satisfaction scores had plummeted. Something was wrong, and Malcolm couldn't shake the feeling that the carefully crafted quarterly reports weren't telling the full story. His phone buzzed with a message from Tasha Williams, his executive assistant of 15 years. "Are you sure about this undercover approach? You could just announce your visit. It would be much easier." Malcolm typed back, "I need to see the real environment, not a performance put on for the CEO." As the plane began its descent, Malcolm closed his eyes, memories washing over him like waves. 25 years ago, he had slept on park benches, his engineering degree worthless in the face of closed doors and subtle rejections. The shame of having to use public restrooms to wash up before interviews. The hollow feeling when potential employers' eyes would slightly narrow upon seeing him in person, despite his impeccable resume. "You're not quite what we're looking for," they would say. Or worse, "We've decided to go in a different direction." One particularly brutal winter, he had stood outside Meridian's old headquarters, then a mid-sized company, watching employees stream in and out in their warm coats while he clutched his portfolio in frozen fingers. The security guard had asked him to move along 3 times that day. Now he owned the company. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, pulling Malcolm back to the present. He gathered his simple carry-on bag, deliberately chosen to look unremarkable, and followed the stream of passengers toward the terminal. The Atlanta International Airport buzzed with activity. Malcolm moved with purpose but without hurry, his plain navy sweater and khaki pants making him virtually invisible among the business travelers. No designer labels, no flashy watch, just a man who could be anybody. As he approached the VIP lounge, a small indulgence he allowed himself, a tall blonde flight attendant stepped directly into his path. Her name tag read, Victoria. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice carrying just enough volume to draw attention from nearby passengers. "This area is for first-class passengers and club members only." Malcolm reached into his pocket. "I understand, I have my—" "Wait outside, please," Victoria cut him off, her eyes flicking dismissively over his attire. "These lounges get crowded with people who don't belong. I need to assist actual members." The way she emphasized people made Malcolm's stomach tighten. He recognized the tone, the barely concealed contempt. It was a familiar cold shoulder that had followed him his entire life, even as he climbed to the pinnacle of corporate America. A hush fell over the nearby passengers. Some looked away in discomfort. Others watched with morbid curiosity. "I have my membership card right here," Malcolm said quietly, holding it out. Victoria barely glanced at it. That could belong to anyone. We've had issues with people using stolen cards. Malcolm noticed a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8, watching the exchange with wide eyes. The child tugged at his father's sleeve and whispered loudly, "Dad." "Why? Is that lady being mean to that man?" The father hushed his son, embarrassed. "I'll wait outside," Malcolm said, stepping back with dignity and tact. "Thank you." As he moved away, Malcolm caught sight of Tasha standing near the pickup zone, watching through the glass partition. Her face twisted with outrage, but Malcolm gave a subtle headshake. "Not now." Victoria's voice carried as she greeted the next person, a younger white man in a rumpled suit. "Welcome to the lounge, sir. Right this way." Outside the airport, Tasha waited with a nondescript rental car, her expression thunderous. "I saw what happened in there," she said as Malcolm approached. "That was completely unacceptable. I should report her immediately." Malcolm placed his bag in the trunk. "No, that's not why I'm here." "Malcolm, you're the CEO. You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of—" "That's exactly why I need to do this," he interrupted gently. "If they treat a stranger like that, imagine how they treat our customers and employees who can't fight back." Tasha fell silent, knowing he was right. "What's the latest from the office?" Malcolm asked, changing the subject as they pulled away from the curb. "They're expecting a corporate consultant named Jordan tomorrow morning. No one suspects it's you." Tasha handed him a folder. "I've set up everything as requested. Hotel reservation under Michael Jordan, office access badge, the works." "Michael Jordan?" Malcolm raised an eyebrow. Tasha smiled. "Couldn't resist. Besides, no one will believe the real Malcolm Green would use such an obvious alias." As they drove, Malcolm reviewed the personnel files of the Atlanta office leadership. Philip Donahue had been the regional manager for 5 years. His results looked impressive on paper: cost-cutting initiatives, streamlined operations. But employee turnover had spiked dramatically in the past 2 years, particularly among minority staff. Meanwhile, at the Atlanta regional office, the afternoon buzz was building. "Did you hear someone important is coming tomorrow?" A young account executive named Bethany whispered to her colleague. Amanda from HR was printing out visitor badges all morning. "Probably just another consultant to tell us how to do our jobs." "Better," her coworker replied with a shrug. Across the open office floor, Philip Donahue stood in his glass-walled office, phone pressed to his ear. At 45, he carried himself with the self-assured air of someone who had never questioned his right to be in charge. "Yes, just some consultant from corporate," he was saying. "Nothing to worry about. I've handled these types before." A nearby cubicle, a young black woman named Layla Thompson kept her head down, focusing on her computer screen while simultaneously straining to hear Philip's conversation. Something about his dismissive tone made her uneasy. As evening fell, Malcolm checked into the Westfield Hotel, a comfortable but unremarkable establishment close to the office. From his window, he could see the illuminated Meridian logo atop the regional headquarters building. 20 years, he whispered to himself. 20 years to get here. His phone rang. Tasha checking in. "Everything's set for tomorrow," she said. "But Malcolm, be careful. The complaints we've seen might just be the tip of the iceberg." "That's what I'm counting on," Malcolm replied, his gaze still fixed on the glowing company logo in the distance. "The only way to remove poison is to find its source." After they hung up, Malcolm opened his laptop to review the employee complaints one more time. They painted a disturbing picture: passed over promotions, hostile comments, selective enforcement of company policies. But something about them suggested a deeper problem: a toxic culture that had taken root and flourished in darkness. Tomorrow, he would begin bringing that darkness into the light. Morning light streamed through the windows of the Atlanta regional office as Malcolm stepped off the elevator. He adjusted his simple gray tie, nice enough to look professional, but nothing that screamed executive. His badge read, Michael Jordan Corporate Consultant. The receptionist, a middle-aged white woman named Barbara, looked up with practiced politeness. "Good morning, how may I help you?" Michael Jordan, I'm here from corporate to conduct an operational review. Malcolm kept his voice neutral, professional. Barbara's eyes widened slightly. Oh, yes, Mr. Donahue is expecting you. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. Between you and me, everyone's been wondering what this visit is about. Just a standard review, Malcolm replied with a reassuring smile. Nothing to worry about. As Barbara made a phone call, Malcolm observed the office environment. Open floor plan, modern furnishings, the usual corporate aesthetic. But something felt off, a tension in the air like a piano string wound too tight. Mr. Jordan? A booming voice drew Malcolm's attention. Philip Donahue strode across the lobby, hand extended, teeth gleaming in a practiced smile. His suit was impeccably tailored, his handshake firm enough to establish dominance without being aggressive. Welcome to Atlanta. We're excited to have you here. Philip's charm was polished to a high shine, but his eyes assessed Malcolm coldly, categorizing him as either useful or irrelevant. Thank you for accommodating this review on short notice, Malcolm said, matching Philip's businesslike tone. Not at all. We have nothing to hide here. Our operation runs like a well-oiled machine. Philip gestured toward the main office area. Let me give you the grand tour. As they walked, Philip narrated with rehearsed enthusiasm, pointing out efficiency, improvements, and cost-saving measures. Malcolm nodded appropriately, noting how employees seemed to stiffen as Philip approached their desks. And this is our star intern, Layla Thompson, Philip said, stopping at a small desk tucked into a corner. Layla, this is Mr. Jordan from corporate. The young woman looked up, and Malcolm immediately recognized intelligence in her eyes, along with something else, wariness. She stood and offered her hand, her grip surprisingly firm. Nice to meet you, Mr. Jordan, she said, her voice steady but cautious. Layla will be your guide for the day, Philip announced. She knows this office, inside and out. I have meetings all morning, but I've cleared my schedule this afternoon for our debrief. He checked his expensive watch. Actually, I need to run. Layla can get you settled. As Philip walked away, Malcolm noticed how Layla's shoulders relaxed, almost imperceptibly. Where would you like to start, Mr. Jordan, she asked. Why don't we begin with the daily operations? I'd like to observe rather than interrupt. Layla nodded and led him to a small desk near the marketing department. You can set up here. It gives you a good view of most of the floor. Throughout the morning, Malcolm watched the office dynamics unfold. On the surface, everything appeared professional. But in the small moments, when people thought no one was watching, he caught glimpses of the real culture. A marketing executive dismissively talked over an Asian team member's presentation. A group of account managers huddled around a desk, laughing at what appeared to be a private joke, while glancing at one of the few black employees. Small moments of exclusion, subtle enough to be denied if confronted. During the lunch break, Malcolm noticed Layla eating alone at her desk. He approached with his own sandwich from the cafeteria. Mind if I join you? She looked surprised but nodded. How long have you been with Meridian? Malcolm asked. Almost a year, Layla replied. This internship was supposed to be my foot in the door. Supposed to be. Layla hesitated, studying him carefully. It's complicated. I've heard that's often code for problematic, but I don't know if I can trust you enough to explain. A small smile flickered across her face. You're more perceptive than the usual consultants they send. Before she could continue, the elevator doors opened, and Victoria from the airport walked in, carrying a takeout bag. Malcolm tensed slightly, but kept his expression neutral as she approached Philip's office, kissing him on the cheek before entering. Layla noticed Malcolm's reaction. That's Victoria, Philip's fiancée. She works for the airline but visits almost daily. They're quite the power couple around here. I see, Malcolm said, deliberately casual. I actually met her yesterday at the airport. It wasn't a pleasant experience. That sounds about right, Layla murmured, then caught herself. I'm sorry. That was unprofessional. Sometimes the truth isn't professional, Malcolm replied. It's just the truth. After lunch, Malcolm observed a department meeting. The contrast was striking. Philip's charm turned on full blast for the white senior managers, while he barely acknowledged contributions from others. When Layla presented market research findings, Philip interrupted repeatedly. "Let's stay focused on actionable insights, not theoretical problems," he said dismissively when she highlighted a concerning trend in customer demographics. "We need solutions, not complaints." The subtle undermining was skilled, maintaining plausible deniability while clearly establishing who had value and who didn't in the hierarchy. Later, Malcolm found himself alone in the break room with Luis, an older man emptying trash cans. "Excuse me," Malcolm said. "I didn't mean to get in your way." "No problem, sir," Luis replied with a slight accent. "Just doing my job." Something about Luis's dignified bearing caught Malcolm's attention. "Have you worked here long?" 3 years. Luis hesitated, then added, "Before that, I was an electrical engineer in Venezuela. 20 years experience, but here," he shrugged eloquently. "Did you apply for engineering positions at Meridian?" "Twice. They said my experience wasn't transferable." Luis glanced around to ensure they were alone. "The second time I saw my application in the trash before I even left the building." Malcolm felt a familiar burn of indignation. "I'm sorry to hear that." "It's the same many places," Luis said with resigned dignity. "But some places are worse than others. Here there are layers. Layers. People who look right but think wrong get ahead. People who think right but look wrong stay invisible." Luis smiled sadly. "I should get back to work. Mr. Donahue doesn't like when I talk to visitors." As the day progressed, Malcolm sent coded updates to Tasha, who was gathering documentation and evidence remotely. During a brief bathroom break, he called her directly. "It's worse than we thought," he said quietly. "The surface looks polished, but underneath—" "I've been reviewing the HR files," Tasha replied. 17 complaints in the last year alone, all quietly resolved or dismissed. And I found something else. Quarterly bonuses going to consulting firms that don't seem to exist. Send everything to my secure server. I'll review it tonight." When Malcolm returned to his temporary desk, he found an anonymous email in his Michael Trinas account. "Not everyone here is blind or complicit. Some of us know exactly what's happening but need help to fix it. P.S. I know who you really are." Malcolm stared at the message, wondering who had sent it and how they had discovered his identity. Before he could investigate further, Philip appeared. "Mr. Jordan, ready for our debrief?" In Philip's office, Malcolm maintained his consultant facade as Philip presented a glowing assessment of his leadership. "Our numbers speak for themselves," Philip said, gesturing to charts showing cost reductions. "We've trimmed the fat and optimized operations." "Impressive," Malcolm said carefully. "Though I notice employee turnover has increased significantly." Philip waved dismissively. "Natural attrition. This generation doesn't understand loyalty. Besides, fresh blood brings fresh ideas." As they spoke, Victoria entered without knocking, clearly comfortable in her fiancé's domain. "Sorry to interrupt, babe," she said, then noticed Malcolm and froze momentarily. "Oh, you're the consultant." "Michael Jordan," Malcolm offered his hand, watching her try to place where she'd seen him before. "Victoria Harmon," she replied, her handshake perfunctory. To Philip she added, "Don't forget dinner with the Whitmans tonight. Their daughter just made partner at Anderson and Beck." "Wouldn't miss it," Philip assured her. "Mr. Jordan and I are almost finished here." After Victoria left, Philip leaned forward confidentially. "Between us, corporate keeps pushing these diversity initiatives, but they don't understand the realities on the ground. Some people just aren't cut out for this level of business, you know?" Malcolm kept his expression neutral. "I find talent comes in all forms." Of course," Philip backpedaled smoothly. "I just mean culture fit is important. We need people who understand how things work in the real world." As the meeting concluded, Philip walked Malcolm to the elevator. "I hope your report reflects the success we've built here." "It will certainly reflect what I've observed," Malcolm replied carefully. Later that evening, in his hotel room, Malcolm spread out documents Tasha had sent over. Financial discrepancies, systematic patterns of promotion and termination, customer Complaints that had been buried. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was ugly. His phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. Found something important. Check your email. The attached file was a newspaper clipping from 1994, a photo of a young Malcolm standing outside the original Meridian headquarters, portfolio in hand. Below was a smaller photo of a security guard identified as Thomas Donahue, Philip's father. Malcolm sat back, memories flooding in. The guard who had told him to move along repeatedly. The same man who had watched him apply 3 times and be rejected 3 times, despite his qualifications. Now I understand, Malcolm whispered to the empty room. This was never just about business. He stared out the window at the Meridian logo glowing in the night, the truth settling around him like a heavy cloak. This wasn't just about fixing a toxic office culture anymore. This was about confronting a generational legacy of prejudice and exclusion, one that had shaped not just his life, but countless others. Tomorrow would bring a new phase of his investigation, and with it, difficult choices about how far he was willing to go to heal the company he had built. Malcolm Green hadn't become a CEO by backing down from challenges, and he certainly wasn't going to start now. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Malcolm's hotel room as he reviewed his notes from the previous day. The connection between Philip and the security guard, who had turned him away decades ago, wasn't just coincidence. It was the missing piece that explained the deeply entrenched culture at the Atlanta office. His phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. Documents ready. Meeting with legal team scheduled for Friday. Malcolm texted back, keep digging. Need solid evidence of policy violations. He straightened his tie, slightly better quality today, but still nothing that would draw attention, and headed for the office, his mind working through next steps. Today would be about pushing boundaries, testing reactions, and seeing just how deep the rot went. The office was already buzzing when Malcolm arrived. He nodded to Barbara at reception and made his way to the small desk he'd been assigned. Layla appeared a few minutes later, 2 coffee cups in hand. Thought you might need this, she said, placing one on his desk. Black, no sugar. I noticed that's how you take it yesterday. Observant, Malcolm commented with a smile. Thank you. Layla hesitated, then lowered her voice. Can I show you something? In the conference room? Malcolm followed her to a small meeting room where she closed the door and pulled out a folder. These are customer satisfaction surveys from the last 3 quarters, she explained, spreading them on the table. The official reports show steady improvement, but I found the raw data in the archive. She pointed to stark discrepancies between the numbers. Someone's been cherry-picking responses to make things look better than they are. Malcolm studied the documents carefully. Why are you showing me this? Layla met his gaze directly. Because my mother worked for Meridian for 22 years. She believed in this company. Said it was one of the few places where people were judged by their work, not their appearance. Her voice softened. She died last year. Cancer. Her last advice to me was to get my foot in the door here because Meridian takes care of its own. She straightened her shoulders. Except it doesn't anymore. Something's wrong here and nobody's listening. I've tried raising concerns through proper channels, but they disappear into thin air. Malcolm felt a wave of respect for the young woman's courage. Why haven't you quit? Because running away doesn't fix anything, Layla replied. My mother didn't raise me to abandon ship when things get tough. She believed in this company for a reason, and I want to understand what changed. Before Malcolm could respond, the door opened and Philip entered, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. There you are, having a private meeting without me? His tone was light, but the underlying tension was unmistakable. Just reviewing some customer feedback, Malcolm replied smoothly. Layla's been extremely helpful. Well, I need to borrow her for the marketing presentation, Philip said. And actually, Mr. Jordan, I was hoping you'd join us. Always good to have corporate's perspective. In the conference room, executives gathered around a large table. Malcolm noted that all the senior positions were filled by white employees, while the few people of color present sat at the edges, laptops open to take notes. The marketing director, Scott Wilson, presented a new campaign targeting urban markets, his terminology growing increasingly problematic as he described their approach. These consumers respond to more basic messaging, Scott explained, flipping through mock-ups. Less nuance, more direct benefit statements. Malcolm watched Layla's expression tighten almost imperceptibly. "I'd like to hear alternative perspectives," Malcolm said, interrupting the flow. "Layla, you've been analyzing customer data. What insights can you share?" All eyes turned to her, including Philip's narrowed gaze. Layla straightened in her chair. Data actually shows that our most engaged customers across all demographics respond to sophisticated, value-driven messaging," she said, her voice gaining confidence. "The assumption that certain groups need dumbed-down content isn't supported by the numbers." Scott laughed dismissively. "That's a nice theory, but we have years of experience in these markets." "Experience isn't the same as evidence," Malcolm countered mildly. "I'd be interested in seeing the data supporting either approach," Philip intervened smoothly. "Let's table this discussion for now. Scott's team has already received budget approval for the current direction." He smiled tightly at Malcolm. "Unless corporate has suddenly changed the approval process?" "Just asking questions," Malcolm replied pleasantly. "That's what I'm here for." After the meeting, Malcolm observed how the group fractured into smaller conversations, with Layla standing alone. By the coffee station, no one acknowledged her contribution or engaged with her ideas. The isolation was subtle, but deliberate, 1,000 small cuts designed to wear down resistance. Later that afternoon, Malcolm was reviewing financial documents when a notification appeared on his tablet. Someone had sent him a video file from an anonymous email address. He glanced around to ensure privacy before opening it. The footage showed Victoria and several employees in what appeared to be a break room after hours, champagne glasses in hand. To another quarter of looking good on paper, Victoria toasted, clearly tipsy. And to Philip, master of making the numbers dance, the group laughed. A younger employee raised her glass. And to clients who never read the fine print. Another chimed in with a mocking accent. "Thank you for your business, we value your input," sending the group into peals of laughter. Victoria's voice cut through. "Can you imagine if they knew what we really think? Especially the Bailey account, that woman with her cultural concerns about our marketing." "You mean Mrs. Jackson?" someone corrected. "Whatever," Victoria waved dismissively. "They all look the same to me." Malcolm's jaw tightened as he closed the video, noting the timestamp, just 2 weeks ago. The casual racism, the mockery of customers, the apparent financial misrepresentations, all captured in high definition. He sent the file securely to Tasha with instructions to verify its authenticity and identify everyone in the footage. As he finished, he noticed someone watching him from across the office, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a pressed pantsuit. Her nameplate identified her as Jocelyn Davis, head of human resources. She approached his desk with measured steps. "Mr. Jordan, I wonder if I might have a word." In her office, Jocelyn closed the door and studied him carefully. "I've been reviewing your credentials," Malcolm maintained his consultant persona. "Is there a problem?" "That depends," she replied, "on whether you're really Michael Jordan from corporate or someone else entirely." Malcolm's expression remained neutral. "What makes you think I'm not who I say I am?" Jocelyn reached into her drawer and pulled out a company magazine from 3 years earlier. On the cover was Malcolm, accepting an industry leadership award. "The resemblance is remarkable," she said quietly. "You've lost weight, grown a beard, but those eyes are unmistakable. You're Malcolm Green." Malcolm considered his options. Denying it seemed pointless, but confirming his identity risked exposure before he was ready. "What do you intend to do with your theory, Ms. Davis?" "That depends on why the CEO of Meridian Enterprises is pretending to be a consultant in his own regional office." Her voice held no accusation, only genuine curiosity. Malcolm decided to test the waters. If, hypothetically, the CEO had received troubling reports about this office, what might someone in your position say? Jocelyn's professional facade cracked slightly. "I might say, It's about damn time. She reached into her drawer again and pulled out a thick folder. 17 formal complaints in the last year, all properly filed, documented, and subsequently buried. 6 cases of proven wage disparity, ignored. 4 instances of qualified minority candidates being passed over for promotion in favor of less qualified white candidates. "And you've done nothing?" Malcolm asked, his tone sharper than intended. Jocelyn's eyes flashed. "I've done everything by the book. Filed reports up the chain, followed procedures, documented patterns. And every single time my concerns disappear into a black hole at corporate." She leaned forward. "So perhaps the better question is, what have you done, Mr. Green?" The challenge hung in the air between them, and Malcolm felt a reluctant respect for her directness. "I'm here now," he replied simply. "Yes," Jocelyn said, studying him. "But are you here to actually fix things or just to manage appearances?" Before Malcolm could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Barbara from reception poked her head in. "Ms. Davis, there's a former employee here insisting on speaking with someone from HR, a Mr. Dean Taylor." Jocelyn frowned. "Dean Taylor was terminated 6 months ago. He says it's urgent, and he won't leave until he speaks with someone." Malcolm stood. "I'd like to join this meeting if you don't mind." Jocelyn hesitated, then nodded. "Actually, I think that's an excellent idea." Dean Taylor sat stiffly in the visitor's chair, his expression a mixture of determination and discomfort at being back in the office. At 35, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had found his footing elsewhere. "Thank you for seeing me," he began, then noticed Malcolm. "I don't believe we've met." "Michael Jordan, corporate consultant," Malcolm offered his hand. "I'm conducting a review of operations." Dean's eyebrows rose slightly. "Interesting timing." He turned back to Jocelyn. "I've started my own digital marketing firm, and I wanted to inform Meridian officially that we've just signed 3 former Meridian clients, including Bailey Financial." Jocelyn's expression remained professionally neutral. "I see. And you came in person to tell us this because I wanted on record that these clients left because of how they were treated here." Dean placed a folder on the desk. "Copies of emails between Philip Donahue and account managers discussing these clients in unflattering terms, emails that were accidentally copied to the clients themselves." Malcolm picked up the folder. "May I?" Dean nodded, watching as Malcolm reviewed the documents. Emails filled with racially charged language and dismissive comments about difficult clients who happened to be black business owners. "How did you get these?" Malcolm asked. "I didn't steal them if that's what you're asking," Dean replied. "When I was fired for performance issues, despite having the highest client retention rate in the department, these were forwarded to me by the clients themselves. They wanted me to know why they were leaving Meridian." Malcolm closed the folder. "And now you've taken them to your new venture." "I've earned their trust by treating them with respect," Dean said simply. "Something that became increasingly rare around here." He stood to leave, then paused. "You know, I loved working for Meridian. Its founder had a vision of what corporate America could be. Too bad that vision died with him." After Dean left, Jocelyn turned to Malcolm. "Still think you understand?" "What's happening here? I'm beginning to," Malcolm replied quietly. That evening, an all-hands meeting was called to discuss quarterly performance. Malcolm sat at the back, observing as Philip took the stage with confident authority. "Despite challenging market conditions, we've maintained profitability," Philip announced, clicking through slides of positive metrics. "However, we're still seeing inefficiencies in certain departments." Malcolm watched as Philip systematically shifted blame for every negative outcome onto departments with the highest diversity, while praising teams led by his inner circle. The narrative was masterfully constructed, plausibly fair on the surface, deeply biased underneath. Later, back at his hotel, Malcolm received an encrypted file from Tasha, the financial report he'd been waiting for. "This can't be right," he muttered, reviewing the numbers. The report detailed plans for upcoming layoffs, supposedly based on performance metrics, but the correlation between performance and selection for termination was non-existent. What did correlate perfectly was age and race. Older employees and minorities made up 87% of the planned cuts. Malcolm's phone rang, Tasha calling directly. "Did you see it?" she asked without preamble. "Yes. Has legal reviewed this yet?" "They're on it now. But Malcolm, there's more. The tech team found evidence that someone's been altering performance reviews after submission. Guess whose reviews magically get worse after final filing?" Malcolm didn't need to guess. The pattern was clear. "We need to move carefully," he said. "Build an airtight case." "How much longer will you stay undercover?" Tasha asked. "The board is getting nervous about your extended vacation." "Not much longer," Malcolm replied. "The masks are starting to slip. I just need a little more time." As he ended the call, a knock at his hotel room door surprised him. Cautiously, he checked the peephole to find a young Asian man in a Meridian employee badge. Malcolm opened the door. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Jordan?" "I'm Jin Park from IT. I'm sorry to bother you, but—" Jin glanced nervously down the hallway. "Can I come in? I don't want to be seen." Once inside, Jin explained that he was a tech intern who had built a customer service algorithm that Philip had taken credit for. "That's not even why I'm here," Jin continued anxiously. "Last week I was backing up the project files and found something weird. My contract has been altered. The terms of my employment agreement have changed, specifically the clause about intellectual property ownership." "Do you have proof?" Malcolm asked. Jin nodded, pulling out a flash drive. "Original and modified versions, with access logs showing who made the changes. It wasn't just mine. It looks like they've been doing this to all the technical staff with foreign backgrounds." As Malcolm reviewed the evidence, he realized the scope of corruption was even wider than he'd suspected. This wasn't just about prejudice, it was systematic exploitation and fraud. "Thank you for bringing this to me," Malcolm said. "I'll make sure it reaches the right people." After Jin left, Malcolm stared out the window at the city lights, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. What had started as an investigation into employee complaints had uncovered something far more sinister, a corrupt system, designed to enrich a few at the expense of many, with racial bias as both tool and cover. His phone buzzed with a text from Jocelyn. "We need to talk, not at the office. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., Adams Park." Malcolm sent a single word in reply. "Confirmed." As he prepared for bed, Malcolm couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would be a turning point. The walls were closing in on Philip's operation, and soon, very soon, it would be time for Malcolm Green to step out of the shadows and into the light. Dawn painted the Atlanta skyline in hues of orange and gold as Malcolm walked through Adams Park. The early morning joggers and dog walkers paid him no mind, just another businessman in casual weekend attire. Jocelyn Davis sat on a bench near the pond, feeding small pieces of bread to the ducks. Without her usual blazer and corporate attire, she looked more approachable, the tension in her shoulders slightly relaxed. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as Malcolm sat beside her. "Your text seemed urgent." Jocelyn tossed the last of the breadcrumbs into the water. "I've been gathering evidence for over a year. Documentation of every policy violation, every instance of discrimination, every financial irregularity I could find." She handed him a small flash drive. "It's all here, enough to justify termination of the entire executive team, but I couldn't go public alone." "Why not?" Malcolm asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Because the last HR director, who tried, was not only fired but blacklisted throughout the industry." Jocelyn's gaze remained fixed on the rippling water. "They claimed she had fabricated evidence to cover her own misconduct. By the time she cleared her name, her career was in ruins." Malcolm studied her profile. "You were afraid." "I was being strategic," she corrected him, waiting for the right moment, the right ally. She finally turned to face him. "When I recognized you, I knew that moment had arrived." "What made you decide to help?" Jocelyn smiled ruefully. "I've worked in HR for 20 years, Mr. Green. I joined Meridian because its founder, your predecessor, had a reputation for integrity. When you took over and maintained those principles, I stayed. But watching Philip and his cronies dismantle everything this company once stood for, She shook her head. Some lines shouldn't be crossed, even for job security. Malcolm pocketed the flash drive. What you're doing is brave. What I'm doing is necessary, she replied simply. The question is, what are you going to do with it? First, I need to understand the full scope of the situation. Then I'll take appropriate action. Jocelyn's expression hardened slightly. With all due respect, Mr. Green, appropriate action often translates to minimal disruption. These people have caused real harm. They've destroyed careers, crushed spirits, and corrupted everything they've touched. They deserve more than a corporate slap on the wrist. I didn't build Meridian into what it is today by being timid, Malcolm assured her. But I won't act rashly either. When I move, it will be decisive. Later that morning, Malcolm made a crucial decision. He invited key figures to a private dinner that evening. Layla, Jin, Luis, and 2 other employees who had shown integrity during his investigation. The invitation was deliberately vague, mentioning only a discussion about the future of Meridian's Atlanta office. They gathered in a private dining room at a small restaurant well away from the corporate crowd's usual haunts. Malcolm arrived last, having changed into a suit of noticeably higher quality than his consultant attire. Not quite CEO level, but a clear step up. Thank you all for coming, he began once they were seated. I've asked you here because each of you has demonstrated something rare in the Atlanta office: integrity. The group exchanged uncertain glances. I'm not sure I understand, Jin said cautiously. We're just doing our jobs. Sometimes doing your job properly, in a broken system, is an act of courage, Malcolm replied. Each of you has tried to uphold standards while those around you cut corners and break rules. Layla studied him intently. You're not really a consultant, are you? Malcolm smiled slightly. No, I'm not. But before I explain further, I need to know something from each of you. If you had the power to fix what's wrong at Meridian, what would you do? One by one, they shared their thoughts. Luis spoke of recognizing talent regardless of background. Jin advocated for transparent intellectual property policies. Others mentioned accountability and fairness. Layla went last. I would rebuild the culture from the ground up, she said firmly. My mother used to say Meridian was a place where your work spoke for itself. I'd make that true again. Malcolm nodded thoughtfully. Those are all excellent points. Now I think it's time for some honesty. He straightened his shoulders. My name isn't Michael Jordan. I'm Malcolm Green. A stunned silence fell over the table. The CEO, Jin whispered incredulously. Yes. Luis shook his head in disbelief. Why would you pretend to be a consultant? Because I needed to see the truth, Malcolm explained. Reports can be manipulated, data can be filtered, but experiencing the environment firsthand, that reveals the real story. So all this time you've been, what, spying on us? Layla asked, her tone a mixture of confusion and something else. Respect, perhaps. I prefer to think of it as conducting a thorough investigation, Malcolm replied with a small smile. And what I've found is deeply troubling. The Atlanta office has become everything Meridian was founded to fight against. An old boys club, where connections matter more than competence, and where certain people are systematically excluded and exploited. He looked around the table. I'm telling you this now because I need allies, people who share my vision for what Meridian can and should be. I intend to make significant changes, but I can't do it alone. What kind of changes? Jin asked hesitantly. The kind that restore Meridian's integrity, Malcolm said firmly. But I need to know, are you with me? One by one, they nodded their agreement, Layla last of all. What do you need from us? She asked. For now, discretion. Continue as normal while I finalize my plans. When the time comes, I'll need you to stand firm in the face of resistance. As the dinner concluded, Malcolm pulled Layla aside. You seem hesitant. She met his gaze directly. I believe in what you're saying, but I've seen too many promises evaporate. Words are easy. Change is hard. You're right to be skeptical, Malcolm acknowledged. So let me be clear. I'm not just planning to reshuffle the deck. I'm changing the entire game. And Philip? Victoria? Their whole network? They'll face the consequences of their actions, Malcolm assured her. But I need you to trust the process. Can you do that? Layla considered for a long moment. My mother would have trusted you. That's enough for me for now. Back at his hotel, Malcolm received an unexpected call from a former board member, William. Hargrove. Malcolm. Bill Hargrove here. Heard a rumor you're in Atlanta. Malcolm frowned. His cover wasn't completely blown, but cracks were appearing. News travels fast. Always does, Bill replied. Listen, I've been hearing things about that office for years. If you're really Malcolm Green, what are you waiting for? That place needed cleaning out a decade ago. I appreciate the input, Bill, but I handle things my way. Just saying, sometimes a sledgehammer works better than a scalpel. After ending the call, Malcolm contacted Tasha to alert her to the potential leak. She had her own update. The board's been officially notified of your investigation, she reported. Mixed reactions, but most are supportive. The legal team has reviewed everything and says we have more than enough to justify immediate termination of at least 8 executives. Good. And the other matter? Corporate security is ready. They'll arrive Monday morning as requested. Perfect. Meanwhile, across town, Layla sat alone in her apartment staring at an email. She'd been passed over for promotion, again. The feedback cited that she didn't smile enough and seemed aggressive in meetings. Standard coded language used to dismiss assertive black women. Her finger hovered over the resign button she'd drafted months ago, but never had the courage to send. Just as she was about to click, her phone rang. Malcolm. I heard about the promotion decision, he said without preamble. Layla's breath caught. How did you? I have access to all HR notifications now, he explained. I'm sorry this happened. It's fine, she said automatically. I'm used to it. It's not fine, Malcolm replied, his voice firm. But I'm asking you not to quit. Why? Should I stay? Nothing ever changes. Don't quit, Malcolm said, his voice softening slightly. Rise with me. Something in his tone, the absolute certainty, made Layla pause. What does that mean? It means I see your potential, even if others have deliberately ignored it. It means I'm planning something bigger than just fixing a broken office. And it means I need people like you beside me, not walking away. After they hung up, Layla closed the resignation email without sending it. For the first time in months, she felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. Hope. The following day, Philip called an emergency leadership meeting. His usually polished demeanor showed signs of strain, his tie slightly askew, his smile a bit too tight. I've just received word that someone from corporate security is flying in next week, he announced, pacing the conference room. Apparently, there are concerns about our operation. Victoria, sitting at his right hand as usual despite having no official role, frowned. What kind of concerns? They wouldn't say, just that it's a standard review. Philip loosened his tie further. We need to make sure everything is in order. Scott, double-check the marketing expenses. Jenna, review all the recent termination paperwork. Make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Malcolm, still in his consultant disguise, watched. The barely concealed panic with satisfaction. Rats beginning to flee a sinking ship. Mr. Jordan, Philip turned to him with forced joviality. Since you've been reviewing our operations, perhaps you have insight into what triggered this security visit? Malcolm shrugged innocently. I'm just a consultant. They don't tell me everything. But surely you've reported your findings to corporate? Any issues you've identified? My report isn't complete yet, Malcolm replied smoothly. But I'm sure corporate security has their own sources of information. Philip's smile tightened further. Of course. Well, I'm confident we have nothing to worry about. Meridian Atlanta has always operated with the highest standards of professionalism. Victoria nodded emphatically. Absolutely. Anyone who says otherwise clearly has an agenda. After the meeting, Malcolm observed the office descending into barely concealed chaos. Executives huddled in whispered conversations, papers being shredded, emails frantically deleted. The mask of competence and control was slipping, revealing the panic beneath. In the IT department, Jin watched as Philip's assistant rushed in, demanding immediate access to the backup servers. With a subtle nod from Malcolm passing in the hallway, Jin explained apologetically that the system was down for maintenance and would require at least 48 hours to restore. Similar scenes played out across the office. Layla accidentally misplaced key marketing files. Luis reported a mysterious leak in the document storage room that had unfortunately damaged several boxes of personnel records. Small acts of resistance, carefully coordinated, buying time for Malcolm's plan to unfold. That evening, as the sun set over Atlanta, Malcolm stood alone at the window of his hotel room, watching the city lights blink on one by one. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation he'd been preparing for since he first read those troubling reports. His phone rang. Tasha making final confirmations. "Everything's set," she reported. "Legal team arrives at 8:30. Corporate security at 9 cow. The board has been briefed and has given unanimous approval for whatever actions you deem necessary." "And the evidence?" "All secured and backed up in 3 separate locations. There's no way they can bury this, Malcolm." After they hung up, Malcolm took out the photograph he'd carried with him throughout this journey. His mother standing proudly in her nurse's uniform, her eyes filled with the same determination he now felt. "This one's for you, Mom," he whispered to the empty room. "For all the doors that were closed in our faces. For all the times we were told to wait outside." Malcolm Green had spent his life building, creating, and lifting others up. Tomorrow, for the first time, he would tear something down, not out of vengeance, but to make space for something better to rise in its place. The calm before the storm settled around him as night deepened. Tomorrow, everything would change. Monday morning arrived with a sense of inevitability. Malcolm stood before the mirror in his hotel room, methodically transforming himself from Michael Jordan, humble consultant, into Malcolm Green, CEO of Meridian Enterprises. Gone were the modest clothes and deliberately understated demeanor. Today, he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and a deep blue tie that conveyed quiet authority. His posture straightened, shoulders back, chin lifted, the physical embodiment of the power he had always possessed but temporarily concealed. Tasha waited in the lobby, her expression a mixture of anticipation and concern. "The legal team is already in position," she informed him as they walked to the car. "Corporate security just checked in, they're standing by." Malcolm nodded, his mind calm despite the confrontation ahead. "And the board?" "Fully briefed and supportive. They've authorized whatever measures you deem necessary." Tasha hesitated, then added, "Are you sure about doing this so publicly?" "Some lessons need witnesses to be effective," Malcolm replied, his voice steady. "Besides, this isn't just about punishing bad behavior. It's about changing a culture. That requires visibility." The Atlanta office was already buzzing with nervous energy when they arrived. Malcolm had timed their entrance for 9:30 a.m., middle of the Monday morning staff meeting, when all key players would be gathered in one place. Barbara at reception nearly dropped her coffee cup when she saw him stride through the doors, no longer hunched as the unassuming consultant, but standing, tall as the powerful executive he truly was. Her eyes darted between Malcolm and Tasha, mouth opening and closing without sound. "Good morning, Barbara," Malcolm greeted her pleasantly. "Could you direct me to the main conference room? I believe there's a staff meeting in progress." "Mr. Green," she finally managed, rising to her feet. Of course, it's just down the hall on the right, but I should probably announce." "That won't be necessary," Malcolm assured her with a small smile. "I think I can find my way." As Malcolm and Tasha approached the conference room, they were joined by Layla, who had been waiting nearby as arranged. Her usual professional attire had been upgraded slightly, a new blazer, head held higher, emanating a quiet confidence that mirrored Malcolm's own transformation. "Ready?" Malcolm asked her softly. Layla took a deep breath and nodded. "More than ready." Malcolm pushed open the conference room doors and the conversation inside abruptly halted. Philip stood at the head of the table, mid-presentation, his expression morphing from annoyance at the interruption to confusion, and finally to dawning horror as recognition set in. "Mr. Jordan?" he stammered, the color draining from his face. The room fell into stunned silence as Malcolm walked purposefully to the center of the room, Layla at his side, Tasha taking position near the door where a corporate security team now appeared. "Not quite," Malcolm replied, his voice carrying effortlessly through the room. "My name is Malcolm Green, and I've seen enough." The silence cracked as murmurs rippled through the gathered employees. Victoria, seated in her usual place of honor despite having no official role, went pale as recognition dawned. The man she had rudely dismissed at the airport was standing before her, revealed as the CEO of the entire company. Philip forced a laugh, trying desperately to regain control of the situation. "There must be some mistake, some kind of prank or—" "This is no prank, Mr. Donahue," Malcolm interrupted, his tone measured, but firm. "For the past week, I have been conducting a personal investigation of this office, following numerous troubling reports." Philip's face hardened as he realized the game was up. "With all due respect, sir, if you had concerns, there are proper channels." "Those channels failed," Malcolm cut him off again, "deliberately and systematically." Tasha stepped forward, distributing folders to key members of the legal team who had quietly entered the room. "We have prepared a comprehensive report of our findings. I suggest you review it carefully before making any statements that might further compromise your position." Victoria stood abruptly, her voice shrill with indignation. "This is outrageous. You can't just barge in here and make accusations." "Ms. Harmon," Malcolm addressed her directly, his gaze unwavering. "While you are not an employee of Meridian, you have been present at numerous confidential meetings and have participated in activities directly harmful to this company and its employees. I suggest you sit down." Something in his tone, the absolute certainty of his authority, made her sink back into her chair. Malcolm turned to address the wider room. "For those wondering what's happening, let me be clear. This office has betrayed the core values of Meridian Enterprises. We have documented evidence of discrimination, financial misconduct, hostile work environment, and frankly, outright corruption." With a nod from Malcolm, Tasha activated a projection screen. What appeared was a carefully edited montage of secretly recorded clips. Philip dismissing minority employees' contributions, Victoria mockingly imitating customers, executives openly discussing how to manipulate performance reviews to target specific employees for termination. The room grew deathly quiet as the evidence mounted, each clip more damning than the last. One particularly shocking segment showed Philip joking about Layla's deceased mother, calling her another diversity hire who couldn't cut it. Layla's intake of breath was audible, but she remained composed, her dignity in stark contrast to Philip's rapidly crumbling facade. When the presentation ended, Malcolm turned to Jocelyn, who had been watching from the side of the room. "Ms. Davis, as head of human resources, can you confirm the authenticity of these documents and recordings?" Jocelyn stood, her professional demeanor firmly in place despite the tension in the room. "Yes, Mr. Green, I can confirm that all materials presented are genuine. I have personally verified each document and have added my signature to the official internal complaint." Philip's face contorted with rage. You've been working against me all this time?" "I've been doing my job," Jocelyn replied evenly. "Protecting this company and its employees from your abuse of power." Jin Park rose from his seat near the back of the room, tablet in hand. "Mr. Green, with your permission, I'd like to present evidence regarding intellectual property theft." At Malcolm's nod, Jin connected his tablet to the projector and displayed a timeline of technological innovations he had developed, alongside documentation showing how they had been systematically claimed by Philip and other executives as their own work. "This algorithm alone," Jin explained, pointing to a customer service system, "has generated over $3 million in passive revenue for Meridian in the past 6 months. It appears under Mr. Donahue's name, but here is the original code, with my digital signature embedded in the comments." Philip's desperation was palpable as he tried one last defense. This is a witch hunt. You can't possibly—" "Mr. Donahue," Malcolm interrupted, his voice not raised but somehow filling the room completely. This region will be under comprehensive review and suspension starting immediately. All leadership contracts are frozen pending. Investigation. Your access to company systems will be revoked as of this moment. He turned to the security team standing by the door. Please escort Ms. Harmon from the premises. As she is not an employee, she has no right to be present for the remainder of this meeting. Victoria erupted, her carefully maintained poise shattering, completely. You can't do this to me. Do you have any idea who I am? Who my family knows? As security approached, she grabbed her purse and pointed a shaking finger at Malcolm. This is because of what happened at the airport, isn't it? This is personal, Malcolm regarded her calmly. No, Ms. Harmon, this is professional. Your behavior at the airport simply gave me insight into the culture that has been fostered here. One where people are judged by appearance, rather than merit, where arbitrary power is wielded without accountability, and where basic human dignity is denied to those deemed other. Victoria's face flushed deep red as security gently but firmly guided her toward the door. The same hand she had raised imperiously at the airport now trembled as she collected her belongings, her pleas for Philip to do something, meeting only his frozen silence. As the door closed behind Victoria, Malcolm addressed the remaining employees. I want to be absolutely clear. Meridian was founded on principles of excellence, integrity, and equal opportunity. Somewhere along the way, this office lost sight of those values. Today, we begin the process of restoring them. He turned to Philip, whose arrogance had collapsed into sullen resignation. Mr. Donahue, you have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. A security team will accompany you. Any attempt to access, delete, or remove company data will result in immediate legal action. As Philip was escorted out, the room remained in stunned silence. Malcolm surveyed the faces before him, some shocked, some relieved, some apprehensive about what would come next. For the rest of you, Malcolm continued, his tone softening slightly. I understand this is unsettling. Change always is. But I want you to know that those who have performed their duties with integrity have nothing to fear. In fact, you now have opportunities that were previously denied to you. He gestured to Tasha, who distributed another set of documents. You'll find details here about the transition process. Jocelyn Davis will temporarily oversee operations while we conduct a thorough assessment of this office. I expect full cooperation from everyone. As the meeting dispersed, employees filing out in subdued groups, Malcolm remained in the conference room with his core team. Tasha, Jocelyn, Layla, Jin, and the legal representatives. Phase 1. Complete, Tasha commented, checking items off her tablet. But this is just the beginning, Malcolm nodded, his expression serious. The real work starts now. Rebuilding is always harder than tearing down. Layla, still processing the revelation about Philip's comments regarding her mother, finally spoke. What happens to the rest of them? The ones who enabled this, who looked the other way? That depends, Malcolm replied, meeting her gaze directly, on whether they choose to be part of the solution going forward. Everyone deserves a chance to show who they truly are when the pressure of a toxic environment is removed. As they gathered their materials to continue the day's work, Malcolm paused at the conference room window, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The storm had broken, but the air had yet to clear. The unmasking was complete. Now came the reckoning. Poryut, midday. News of the dramatic events at Meridian's Atlanta office had spread throughout the company's national network. Malcolm's executive team had prepared a carefully worded internal announcement, followed by a brief press statement acknowledging leadership changes at the regional level. What they hadn't anticipated was how quickly the story would catch fire on social media. An employee had discreetly recorded Malcolm's confrontation with Philip and Victoria, and though no identifiable faces were visible, the audio painted a vivid picture. By afternoon, the Meridian reckoning was trending, with employees from other branches beginning to share their own experiences of discrimination and misconduct. In his temporary office, formerly Philip's, Malcolm reviewed the social media reports with Tasha. This is spreading faster than we expected, she observed, scrolling through the growing number of posts. Good, Malcolm replied. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. A knock at the door announced Jocelyn, who entered with a stack of folders. The initial assessment you requested. We've identified 23 employees who were passed over for promotion despite superior qualifications, 15 who received manufactured negative reviews, and 32 who experienced documented harassment. Malcolm accepted the folders. Thank you. We'll address each case individually. There's something else, Jocelyn added, her expression troubled. I've been offered the leadership role in ethics and compliance, and I'm hesitant. Why? Malcolm asked, genuinely curious. You've demonstrated exactly the kind of integrity we need. Jocelyn's professional composure cracked slightly. I should have done more, sooner. I followed procedures, documented everything, but I didn't. Break ranks. I didn't stand up publicly when I saw what was happening. You did what you could within a system designed to silence you, Malcolm countered. And when the moment came to take a stand, you did. That's what matters. After Jocelyn left, Malcolm turned to Tasha. Schedule a meeting with Layla this afternoon. I want to discuss her future with the company. Later, when Layla arrived, she seemed different, still processing the morning's revelations, but with a new steadiness in her gaze. You wanted to see me, Mr. Green? Malcolm, please, he corrected gently. After what we've been through, I think we can dispense with formalities. Layla smiled slightly. Old habits. I want to offer you the position of Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the region, Malcolm said directly. You have the insight, the experience, and the integrity the role requires. To his surprise, Layla didn't immediately accept. I appreciate the offer, but I need to think about it. May I ask why? She met his gaze directly. Because I'm not sure I want to stay, and because I'm not convinced a DEI role is where I can make the most difference. Sometimes those positions become ways to silo diversity concerns rather than addressing core issues. Malcolm nodded thoughtfully. Fair points. Take some time. The offer remains open. As Layla left, Malcolm made a note on his tablet. Her response had confirmed what he already suspected. She was exactly the kind of leader Meridian needed. That evening, Malcolm visited Luis at his modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood. The older man was clearly surprised to find the CEO of Meridian at his door. Mr. Green, is something wrong? Nothing's wrong, Malcolm assured him, accepting the invitation to step inside. I wanted to speak with you personally. Luis's home was simple but immaculate, family photos lining the walls. A young woman, his daughter Malcolm guessed, appeared briefly from another room before discreetly withdrawing. I've reviewed your employment history, Malcolm began. 20 years as an electrical engineer in Venezuela, specialized training in sustainable energy systems, fluent in 3 languages, yet Meridian has you emptying trash cans. Luis shrugged with dignified resignation. It is not unusual. Many, like me, it ends now, Malcolm interrupted gently. I'd like to offer you a corporate retraining scholarship to update your credentials to U.S. standards, followed by a position in our engineering department that matches your expertise. Luis stared at him in disbelief. Then to Malcolm's surprise, the proud man's eyes filled with tears. My daughter, he said softly. She is studying engineering also. I told her not to hope for too much, that the doors might be closed to her, as they were to me. Not anymore, Malcolm promised. Not while I have anything to say about it. The following day, Malcolm faced his first serious pushback. A video call with the board included William Hargrove, a longtime board member with close ties to Philip's family. This entire approach seems unnecessarily dramatic, Hargrove argued. A quieter transition would have protected shareholder value and company reputation. I disagree, Malcolm replied calmly. The problems in Atlanta weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a systemic failure. Addressing them required decisive action. Hargrove's expression hardened. Some might say your judgment was clouded by emotion. Your personal experience, at the airport, was merely the final confirmation of what months of reports had already indicated, Malcolm finished for him. With respect, Bill, you let rot fester in your own house. I'm cutting it out. That's not emotional. It's necessary surgery. The conversation grew increasingly tense, with other board members eventually intervening to support Malcolm's position. By the end of the call, it was clear that while not everyone agreed with his methods, the majority recognized the necessity of his actions. Meanwhile, Philip was not accepting his dismissal quietly. Through high-priced PR firms and personal connections, he began spinning a narrative of corporate overreach and cancel culture, positioning himself as a victim of changing times. Tasha brought the news to Malcolm in his hotel suite that evening. He's hired Dawson & Burke PR and is threatening a wrongful termination lawsuit. He's giving interviews to sympathetic outlets, claiming he's being scapegoated for company-wide issues. Malcolm remained unperturbed. Let him try. We have the evidence. Tasha hesitated. There's more. He signed an NDA 5 years ago as part of a previous incident settlement. If he continues making public statements, he'll be in direct violation. Document everything, but don't engage yet, Malcolm instructed. Let him dig his hole deeper. The next morning brought a new challenge. Somehow, photos of Malcolm from his days of homelessness had been leaked to tabloid media. Headlines questioned whether his personal vendetta against successful executives stemmed from class resentment rather than legitimate concerns. Malcolm's phone rang constantly with calls from other executives and PR advisors suggesting various forms of damage control. He ignored most of them, instead calling a press conference for that afternoon. Standing before the assembled media, Malcolm addressed the photos directly. Yes, that's me, he said simply, as the images were displayed on screens behind him. 25 years ago, I was homeless despite having an engineering degree and a strong work ethic. The reasons why are complex, but they include the same biases and barriers that many still face today. He paused, surveying the room of reporters. I'm not ashamed of that history. In fact, it informs my leadership. It taught me that talent and potential exist everywhere, and that systems that arbitrarily exclude people based on appearance, background, or other irrelevant factors aren't just unjust. They're inefficient. They waste human potential. And as CEO of Meridian, I consider that unacceptable. The press conference shifted the narrative dramatically. By evening, the story had evolved from CEO's possible vendetta to from homeless to hero. CEO takes stand against discrimination. Back at the Atlanta office, the transformation continued. Former employees who had been unfairly terminated were contacted and invited to return. Some accepted eagerly, while others had moved on to better opportunities, but appreciated the acknowledgement of past wrongs. Jin was given a platform to present his original customer service algorithm at a live investor meeting, with Malcolm publicly crediting him as the innovator. The young man's nervous but brilliant presentation earned a standing ovation and sparked immediate interest from venture capital firms seeking to invest in his future projects. They've offered me funding to develop a startup, Jin told Malcolm. Afterward, his expression a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. I'm not sure whether to accept or stay with Meridian. Why not both? Malcolm suggested. Meridian could be your first client and investment partner. We get priority access to your innovations. You get the freedom to develop them your way. The arrangement was quickly formalized, creating a new model for retaining innovative talent without stifling their entrepreneurial spirit. 7 days after the initial confrontation, Malcolm called a company-wide video meeting to announce structural changes. Employees from all regions watched as he outlined a new vision for Meridian's future. What happened in Atlanta wasn't an isolated incident, he acknowledged frankly. It was an extreme example of issues that exist to varying degrees throughout our organization. Today we begin addressing them systematically. He introduced a new initiative called The Second Chair, a program designed to identify talent in overlooked positions and fast-track their development into leadership roles. For too long, we've defined potential too narrowly, Malcolm explained. We've missed brilliant minds because they didn't fit our preconceived notions of what leadership looks like. That changes now. After the announcement, Malcolm met with Layla, who had requested a private conversation. I've been thinking about your offer, she began. I'm declining the DEI position. Malcolm nodded, unsurprised. I thought you might. But, she continued, I would accept a role as regional director, replacing Philip. Not because I think I'm ready, but because someone needs to rebuild this office from the inside out. Someone who remembers what it was supposed to be. Malcolm smiled. The position is yours. On one condition, you continue your education, fully funded by Meridian. Your potential goes beyond even this role, and I want you prepared for what comes next. As Malcolm prepared to return to the corporate headquarters, having set the transformation in motion, he received word of a surprising development. Victoria, unable to secure another position in the airline industry after video of her airport behavior went viral, had applied for a customer service representative position at a call center. Should we intervene? Tasha asked when she brought him the news. Malcolm considered the question carefully. No. Everyone deserves the chance to learn and grow from their mistakes. Maybe direct experience on the receiving end of customer service will provide perspective she lacked before. Philip's situation resolved less ambiguously. His lawsuit was dismissed when Meridian's legal team produced evidence of his NDA violations. The final blow came when his financial misconduct was fully documented, resulting in criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. On his last day in Atlanta, Malcolm visited a small cemetery on the outskirts of the city. Layla stood beside a well-maintained grave, placing fresh flowers beside the headstone. "My mother would have liked you," she said as Malcolm approached. "She always believed Meridian was special." "It is," Malcolm replied, "because of people like her, and now, because of people like you." As they walked back to the car, Layla asked the question that had been on her mind since the beginning. "Why did you buy Meridian in the first place? Of all the companies you could have acquired?" Malcolm smiled slightly. "Because 25 years ago, they rejected my application 3 times without ever giving me an interview. Because their security guard told me to move along when I waited, hoping to speak directly with a hiring manager." He looked back at the skyline, the Meridian logo visible even from this distance. "I didn't buy it for revenge. I bought it because I saw what it could be if the barriers were removed. Sometimes you have to become the change you're waiting for." As they drove away, neither noticed a solitary figure watching from a distance. Philip, now unemployed and increasingly isolated, observing the connection between the CEO and the woman who had taken his position. His expression was unreadable as he turned away, pulled out his phone and dialed. "About that severance package," he began, then pulled the phone from his ear with a grimace. The call had gone straight to voicemail. 3 months after the dramatic events at the Atlanta office, the physical transformation was immediately apparent to anyone who entered the building. Gone were the sterile, impersonal interiors that had defined the space for years. In their place stood vibrant walls adorned with work from local artists, open collaborative spaces, and glass-walled offices that emphasized transparency rather than hierarchy. But the true change ran deeper than decor. Under Layla's leadership as the new regional director, the office culture had begun a remarkable metamorphosis. On a bright Tuesday morning, Layla stood at the front of the main conference room addressing the assembled team. At 28, she carried herself with a natural authority that belied her years. Confidence without arrogance, strength tempered with empathy. "Today marks an important milestone," she announced, scanning the faces before her. "For the first time in 5 years, our customer satisfaction ratings have exceeded the national average across all demographics." A round of applause filled the room, genuine rather than obligatory, as it would have been under the previous leadership. "This isn't just about numbers," Layla continued. "It's about rebuilding trust, with our customers and with each other." The door opened and Malcolm entered quietly, taking a seat at the back of the room. He nodded for Layla to continue, content to observe rather than command attention. "We've made significant progress, but our work is just beginning," she said. "Which brings me to our next announcement. I'm pleased to introduce our newest team member who will be joining the engineering department." Luis entered, now dressed in a professional suit rather than maintenance coveralls, his dignified bearing even more pronounced in his new role. "Many of you already know Luis Mendoza," Layla said warmly. "What you might not know is that he holds multiple patents in sustainable energy systems, and has 20 years of engineering experience. We're fortunate to have his expertise as we develop our new green initiative. Luis stepped forward, visibly moved. Thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to contributing my knowledge and learning from all of you. After the meeting dispersed, Malcolm approached Layla. That was well handled. Luis deserves this moment of recognition. It's the least we could do, Layla replied. Did you see the prototype he developed? It could revolutionize our approach to energy consumption in regional offices. I did. We're implementing it company-wide next quarter. Malcolm gestured toward her office. Do you have a moment? In the privacy of her office, previously Philip's domain, now transformed with warm colors and family photos, Malcolm shared his latest initiative. I'd like you to lead a special project, he explained, passing her a tablet with a proposal. We're creating a mentorship program specifically for employees who've been overlooked or sidelined in the past. Layla reviewed the document thoughtfully. This is ambitious. Necessary, Malcolm corrected. The talent has always been there. We just need to remove the barriers preventing it from flourishing. As they discussed details, Layla's assistant knocked gently on the door. Ms. Thompson, the Baileys are here for your meeting. Send them in, please. An elegant older black woman entered, accompanied by her daughter, both owners of Bailey Financial, one of the clients who had left Meridian during Philip's tenure. Mrs. Bailey, Ms. Bailey, Layla greeted them warmly. Thank you for coming. You know Mr. Green, of course. Indeed, Mrs. Bailey replied, shaking Malcolm's hand. Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Green, though I must admit I was skeptical about returning to Meridian after our previous experience. Understandably so, Malcolm acknowledged. We failed you before. We're committed to earning back your trust. That's precisely why we're here, the younger Ms. Bailey said. We've been impressed with the changes we've observed. Ms. Thompson's presentation last week was particularly compelling. Layla has full authority to implement whatever measures she deems necessary to serve your needs properly, Malcolm assured them. If you decide to return to Meridian, you'll be working with the best team we have. After the Baileys left, Layla exhaled slowly. That would be a significant account to recover. It's not just about the account, Malcolm reminded her. It's about making things right. Later that afternoon, Malcolm visited the HR department where Jocelyn was conducting interviews for her expanding ethics team. Through the glass wall, he observed her thoughtful questioning of candidates, noting how she gave each person her full attention regardless of their rank or background. When the interviews concluded, Malcolm joined her in her office. How's the team coming together? Jocelyn sighed, removing her reading glasses. Slowly. Finding people with both the technical skills and the moral courage for this work isn't easy. You seem troubled, Malcolm observed. I am, she admitted. Building an ethics department is one thing. Building trust in that department after years of institutional failure is another challenge entirely. Malcolm nodded understanding. People need to see that things have truly changed. Exactly. And despite all our progress, I still sense hesitation when employees bring forward concerns. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop, for things to revert to how they were before. Trust is earned by showing up, Malcolm reminded her, not by apologizing endlessly. Your actions will speak louder than any reassurance. Jocelyn straightened her shoulders, resolve returning to her expression. You're right, we keep moving forward. Across town, a different kind of rebuilding was taking place. Victoria Harmon sat at a small desk in a crowded call center, headset snug against her ear as she addressed yet another dissatisfied customer. Yes, ma'am. I understand your frustration, she said mechanically, the script now familiar after weeks on the job. I'd be happy to escalate your concern to a supervisor. As she transferred the call, a notification appeared on her screen. Her customer satisfaction ratings for the week. Below average again. Her third warning. Victoria's supervisor approached her desk. Ms. Harmon, can we have a word? Following him to a small office, Victoria braced herself for the inevitable. Your metrics aren't improving, he began without preamble. You're struggling to connect with customers, particularly those from diverse backgrounds. Victoria fought back the defensive retort that rose automatically to her lips. This job, mundane as it was, represented her last chance after being blacklisted from the airline industry. Philip was no longer answering her calls, her savings were dwindling, and her former friends had distanced themselves since her public downfall. "I'm trying," she said instead, the words unfamiliar in her mouth. "It's more difficult than I expected." Her supervisor's expression softened slightly. "Look, you clearly have communication skills and intelligence, but customer service requires empathy, the ability to genuinely see things from someone else's perspective." "And you think I'm incapable of that?" Victoria asked, an edge creeping into her voice. "I think you haven't had to develop that muscle," he replied carefully. "But you can learn. We have a training program specifically designed to improve empathetic communication. I'd like to enroll you." Swallowing her pride, Victoria nodded. "All right, I'll try it." As she walked back to her desk, her phone buzzed with a message from Tasha. "Malcolm asked me to check on your progress. Let me know if you need anything." Victoria stared at the screen in disbelief. After everything that had happened, Malcolm Green was still keeping tabs on her? Not to punish, but to help? She typed back a simple response. "I'm learning." Meanwhile, back at Meridian headquarters, Malcolm was meeting with Jin and a group of venture capitalists eager to invest in his new startup while maintaining his connection to Meridian. "The prototype has exceeded all benchmarks," Jin explained, his confidence having grown enormously in the months since his algorithm was recognized. "With Meridian as our primary testing ground, we can refine the system in real-world conditions before wider implementation." One of the investors leaned forward. "And you developed this entirely on your own?" "The core concept? Yes," Jin replied. "But I've assembled a team of developers who bring complementary skills." He gestured to the diverse group seated beside him, including 2 former Meridian employees who had previously been sidelined. "That's the advantage of our partnership model," Malcolm added. "Jin retains creative control and ownership of his intellectual property, while Meridian gains early access to innovative solutions. Everyone wins." After the successful presentation, Malcolm pulled Jin aside. "I have another proposition for you. We're launching a coding academy for disadvantaged youth. Would you consider teaching a master class?" Jin's eyes widened. "Me? I've never taught before." "Sometimes the most impactful teachers are those who remember what it felt like to be overlooked," Malcolm replied. "Think about it." That evening, Malcolm returned to the Atlanta office for a special event, the launch of Meridian's nationwide commercial featuring employees sharing their journeys. The main conference room had been transformed into a viewing space, with team members gathered in anticipation. As the lights dimmed, the commercial began. On screen, Luis appeared first, speaking eloquently about his transition from janitor to lead engineer. Jin followed, demonstrating his algorithm while explaining how proper recognition had changed his career trajectory. Other employees shared similar stories of transformation, not just in Atlanta, but across Meridian's national network. The commercial concluded with Layla standing in front of the Atlanta skyline. "At Meridian, we believe talent can come from anywhere," she said, her voice clear and confident. "Our strength lies in recognizing potential in unexpected places." The final voice belonged to Malcolm, though he appeared only briefly. "This isn't just our company philosophy, it's our promise." As the lights came up, the room erupted in applause. Malcolm remained at the back, allowing Layla and the featured employees to receive the recognition they deserved. Later, as the celebration continued, Malcolm slipped away to his temporary office. On his desk sat a small framed photograph, his mother in her nurse's uniform, standing proudly outside her workplace. Beside it, he placed a pin from the new Atlanta branch. "We finally made it, Mom," he whispered. His phone rang, Tasha with an update on the nationwide implementation of the changes that had begun in Atlanta. "The Dallas office completed their restructuring today," she reported. "Denver is halfway through their transition. Overall, we're ahead of schedule." And the resistance? Malcolm asked, knowing that change never came without pushback, diminishing as results come in. Success is a powerful argument. After they hung up, Malcolm stood at the window overlooking the city lights. The rebuilding was well underway, not just of a company, but of lives, dreams, and possibilities that had been systematically suppressed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, for the first time in months, Malcolm allowed himself to feel genuine satisfaction in what they had accomplished. Not victory. That was too simple a word for the complex process of transformation. Rather, progress. Real, measurable, human progress. 1 year after Malcolm's undercover investigation, the Atlanta Regional Office of Meridian Enterprises stood as a model for the entire corporation. The physical space had been completely renovated. Gone were the closed-off executive suites and isolated cubicles, replaced by a thoughtfully designed environment that encouraged collaboration while respecting the need for focus. More profound than the architectural changes was the transformation in energy and purpose. Where tension and fear had once permeated the atmosphere, a sense of shared mission now united the team. Employees moved through the space with confidence, engaged in meaningful work rather than political maneuvering. Malcolm walked through the main floor, greeting people by name as he made his final tour before returning to headquarters. After months of hands-on involvement in the rebuilding process, he was officially handing over full operational control to Layla and her leadership team. In the years since taking over, Layla had exceeded even Malcolm's high expectations. She had systematically rebuilt client relationships, restructured departments based on merit rather than favoritism, and implemented transparency measures that made accountability the norm rather than the exception. Everything's in order for the transition, she assured Malcolm as they met in her office. Once Philip's domain, now a space that reflected her own leadership style. Warm but professional, accessible but focused. "I have complete confidence in you," Malcolm replied, handing her a small box. "This came from the board this morning." Layla opened it to find a platinum pin with the Meridian logo, the traditional symbol given to executives who had reached the highest levels of leadership. "This is," she began, momentarily speechless. "Well earned," Malcolm finished for her. "Your promotion to senior vice president is official as of today. You'll oversee not just Atlanta, but the entire Southeast region." Layla's expression shifted from surprise to determination. "I won't let you down. I know you won't. But remember, true leadership isn't about not failing. It's about how you respond when you do." Across town, at the same international airport, where their story began, a young boy of about 8 walked hand in hand with his father through the terminal. Something on a nearby television screen caught his attention. A news segment featuring Malcolm Green accepting an award for corporate transformation. "Dad, look!" the boy exclaimed, pointing excitedly. "That's the man from last year, the one the mean lady wouldn't let into the lounge." His father followed his son's gaze, recognition dawning. "You're right, Tyler. That is the same man." "See? I told you he was important," Tyler insisted. "Is he famous now?" "He was famous then, too," his father explained. "We just didn't know it." Tyler considered this thoughtfully. The lady was really mean to him. Did she get in trouble? "I don't know, son. But sometimes the best consequence isn't punishment. It's learning to be better." Meanwhile, at a small cemetery on the outskirts of Atlanta, Malcolm stood alone before a simple headstone. He placed fresh flowers beside the name Elaine Green, beloved mother and healer. From his pocket, he took a small pin, the original Meridian logo from when he had first acquired the company. Carefully, he pressed it into the soft earth beside the flowers. "We finally made it," he whispered. "The company I always knew it could be." As he stood in silent communion with his mother's memory, his phone buzzed with a notification. A nationwide commercial was launching today, the centerpiece of Meridian's rebranding campaign. Malcolm had approved the concept, but had deliberately avoided viewing the final cut, wanting to experience it alongside the public. Back at his hotel, Malcolm turned on the television just as the commercial began airing. It opened with Layla speaking, directly to the camera. A company is more than its profits or products. It's a community of people with unique gifts, perspectives, and potential. The camera pulled back to reveal Jin working with a group of young coding students from diverse backgrounds. When we recognize and nurture talent wherever we find it, innovation flourishes. Luis appeared next, leading a team of engineers. Experience comes in many forms. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from unexpected sources. The commercial continued with testimonials from employees and clients across the country, culminating in a powerful montage of Meridian's transformed workplaces, vibrant, diverse, and purposeful. Malcolm's voice provided the narration. At Meridian, we believe that true excellence requires more than skill. It requires character, integrity, and respect for every individual's dignity and potential. The final shot returned to Layla. This isn't just our corporate philosophy, it's our promise to you. Because at Meridian, everyone deserves a seat at the table. As the commercial ended, Malcolm received a text from Tasha. Board members calling. They love it. Stock is already up 3 points. He smiled, but it wasn't the financial validation that moved him. It was seeing the genuine transformation captured on screen, not just in policies or metrics, but in human lives. Later that afternoon, Malcolm attended his final board meeting as active CEO of Meridian. The boardroom fell silent as he made his unexpected announcement. Effective next quarter, I'll be transitioning to executive chairman, he informed them. It's time for new leadership to take Meridian into its next chapter. William Hargrove, once his critic but now an ally, leaned forward. This is rather sudden, Malcolm. May I ask why? It's not sudden at all, Malcolm replied calmly. This has been my plan from the beginning. I didn't acquire Meridian to run it indefinitely. I acquired it to transform it, to build a company where talent and integrity matter more than appearance or connections. He distributed folders containing his detailed transition plan. The executive team I've assembled over the past year is more than capable of continuing this work. As chairman, I'll provide guidance while giving them room to lead. And what will you do with your newfound time? Another board member inquired. Malcolm smiled. I'm establishing a foundation focused on workplace justice and economic opportunity. The details are in your packets. What he didn't mention was that he was donating a significant portion of his personal Meridian shares to fund the foundation, a decision that would make headlines the following week. As the meeting concluded, Malcolm received an unexpected update about Victoria Harmon. After completing the empathy training program at her customer service job, she had gradually improved her performance. Recently, she had been promoted to team leader, where she was showing surprising skill at mentoring new employees. Would you like us to continue monitoring her progress? Tasha asked. Malcolm considered the question. No, she's finding her own path now. That's all anyone can ask. The next morning, Malcolm prepared for his departure from Atlanta. His bags were packed, his affairs in order. One last task remained. He visited Philip Donahue's father, Thomas, now in his 80s, and living in a nursing home outside the city. The elder Donahue, once the security guard who had turned Malcolm away decades ago, barely recognized him at first. Mr. Green? Thomas squinted through thick glasses. The CEO? What brings you here? Closure, Malcolm replied simply, taking a seat beside the old man's wheelchair. Do you remember turning away a young man from Meridian headquarters in 1994? 3 times in 1 week? Thomas frowned, searching his memory. I turned away many people. It was my job to keep the riffraff out. That riffraff was me, Malcolm said quietly. I had an engineering degree, recommendations and determination, but I never got past the front door because of how I looked. Understanding dawned slowly on Thomas's weathered face. That was you? And now you own the company? Life takes unexpected turns, Malcolm acknowledged. I didn't come to make you feel bad about the past. I came because holding on to old grievances serves no one. Your son made his own choices, but I wanted you to know that I don't hold you responsible for his actions or mine. The old man's eyes glistened. My Philip always believed appearances mattered most. His mother and I taught him that. To our shame. We all have the capacity to learn and grow, Malcolm said, standing to leave. Even at my age, even at yours. As Malcolm walked away, he felt a weight lifting, the final piece of his personal journey falling into place. His last stop was the airport. As he approached the terminal, he noticed how different his experience was now. Not because he was dressed in expensive clothes or carried the trappings of power, but because he moved through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. At the VIP lounge entrance, a flight attendant held the door open with a warm smile. "Welcome in, Mr. Green," she said, recognizing him from recent media coverage. "It's an honor to have you with us today." Malcolm nodded in acknowledgement, the moment striking him with its perfect symmetry. Full circle indeed. As he settled into his seat on the plane, Malcolm gazed out at the Atlanta skyline receding below. What had begun as an investigation into workplace discrimination had evolved into something far more profound, a reckoning with the past and a blueprint for the future. His phone buzzed with a final text from Layla. "Thank you for everything. The real work continues," Malcolm smiled, typing his response. "It always does." The plane banked gently into the clouds, carrying him home. What privilege allows us to overlook in others? And what courage does it take to finally see ourselves? If this story moved you, like and subscribe for more narratives that challenge how we navigate our workplaces, our relationships, and ultimately, our shared humanity.